You're listening to Up to the Mic. If you want to learn about the struggles and triumphs of starting a business, performing for sold-out arenas, or inspiring those you lead, Up to the Mic is the show for you. Throw on some headphones and get ready to listen as our host, Vinny Hale, sits down to showcase the stories of those who deserve their stories be told. From young entrepreneurs to critically acclaimed musicians and so much more, Vinny helps compile a season of interviews that inspire listeners to follow in the footsteps of his guest. My next guest is the author of Beyond Enough, the high performer's path to confident leadership. Not only that, she's the founder of the Institute of Leadership and Culture, providing trainings for leadership teams all over the world, and an adjunct professor at Florida Atlantic University. Here to talk about her passions, words of advice for high achievers, and her journey to the top of the business world, please welcome Ana Larrea-Albert. Welcome back to another episode of Up to the Mic, everybody. We are so glad you're here tuning in. We've got a stellar episode in store for you today. Ana, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Vinny. So happy and glad to be here.
Well, hey, you've got an absolute abundance of cool stuff going on in your life right now. I want to dive into absolutely all of it and share with the listeners what all you're up to these days. Before we do, though, I like to give a little bit of the backstory and always bring it back to the beginning. So can you start by just sharing a little bit more about yourself, what your life was like growing up, and then transition us into what you're up to these days?
Sure. So, Vinny, I'm originally from Quito, Ecuador. Born and raised, moved to the U.S. in the late 90s to pursue my education. Actually, I was halfway done back in Ecuador. Came to Florida Atlantic University to complete my undergrad. Quito, Ecuador, education-wise, I was very driven. I liked my top grades. I've been very ambitious in that sense academically, just super curious, love to learn. And that continued through college. And it was hard to decide which way I wanted to go. So I think that's one of the challenges that many young professionals and students in college do face is now what? I'm stuck with this one decision, this one career for me, and I have to get it right. Well, my recommendation is don't worry about it. Go for it. You can change. I'm on my second career now after having experienced banking, private equity. I was in Morgan Stanley. I was doing operations for an import-export company from France. I've been in the world of medical devices, in shipbuilding. So I've been across industries in different disciplines, truly just absorbing the information and just getting better at whatever was presented to me. So I think that's something good to keep in mind whenever you're working through this what next question. And I especially see it now a lot because I am an adjunct professor at Florida Atlantic University for the professional MBA program. And I do have people as young as their mid-20s all the way through 50s and across the range of positions and career levels from just getting started in their leadership career all the way to directors and executives. And it's wonderful to be able to share with them my knowledge from 20 years in business, the last third of it as an executive. And now in this second career, like I mentioned, this pivot that I did a few years ago into leadership development. I get to coach. I have a coaching program called the Confident Leader Lab. I teach. I'm also an international speaker, bilingual, all around leadership and development. And this book that you mentioned, thank you for bringing that up. It's very much focused. It's thinking about that young professional and helping equip with tools and frameworks to allow them to gain that confidence in their leadership. So leadership for some is a bit a scary thought and sometimes a little too far out into the career ladder. But you can one of the examples, or one of the goals of the book, is to bring leadership to you. To now you can start exercising leadership with confidence.
Well, as you mentioned the book, I'm curious, are you able to share with us a little nugget of information from it? I think what I'm most wanting to understand is, for someone like yourself who has made a career transition, and you've, from the sounds of it, gone through a lot of different types of roles in your past, is that something you would recommend to other younger recent graduates or people coming out of college who might not know if they want to stick with one career or one company for the long haul? Or would you recommend more so seeing as much as you can as early as you can, and then honing in on what, I guess, drives you or positions you the most adequately to then go on and pursue a leadership role in that one that you find the most interesting?
I'm not sure those are the only two paths.
Okay.
But I wouldn't want to tell you that one way is it's a faster route or a more efficient route. I would rather allow the individual to feel how that actually works. And this is very important to me, that the sooner you get aligned with a purpose, you get aligned with a bigger vision for you, I think that's going to help guide your decisions. So if you're thinking about, there are some people that come out of the womb knowing that they're going to be a lawyer, or they want to be an accountant, or they want to be a doctor. And it's incredible how precise and defined their future is for them. And that's fantastic. And I absolutely empower them to do that. For a lot of us, including myself, when you feel like you're multi-passionate, when you feel like many things are interesting, when you're curious about the world and how it works, I would encourage you to just, wherever you land, find something and start there and learn the most that you can from that, and find how that can be transferable in terms of skills and knowledge to the next step. What I'm more interested in is telling you not to, or telling the individual not to feel like you're stuck in a particular career, or you're stuck at a particular company. There's so many paths to a fulfilling career that if you choose to start somewhere, yes, get really good at it, work hard, learn as much as you can, take advantage of all the education that you can get from that company, from that discipline. And you will feel, the more connected you are with your purpose and where you want to go, as a true north, right? That will help you guide your path.
Well, as someone who is an adjunct professor for professional MBA programs, I know a lot of our listeners have brought up the question to me before around whether or not an MBA is something to pursue, either to take the next step in the career that they're already in, or potentially to shift and make a career transition. Are those typically the reasons that you'll see people pursuing their MBA, or are there other challenges or expectations that people have going into a program like that?
Love the variety of reasons why people come to the programs. There are, of course, those who believe that having an MBA is a requirement for their careers. And of course, there are some areas, some disciplines where the more education, the more certifications you get, the more you fulfill the requirements to move up the ladder. Other people do join just thinking, where else can this take me? And the beauty of an MBA program, and the reason why I did myself many years ago an MBA program, was that you come out fluent in a multitude of languages for a business, for managing a business. So if you have dedicated your life to, let's say, accounting, you might not be as fluent in marketing and operations and maybe data analysis. So what the MBA does is it opens doors of knowledge into all of the disciplines that are required to run a business. So when you're done doing all of the research projects and doing, and absorbing all of this information, you come out of an MBA program with the possibility of speaking with the CFO, speaking with the CMO, just being able to communicate and understand what the other stakeholders in that company require from you, right? In whatever discipline you're in. So I love that idea of, even if you're choosing to be in finance, even if you're choosing to be in marketing or any particular discipline, when you obtain an MBA, you have that visibility to what's needed, required, or even just expected of you across the board as you climb the ladder. So you need to become more strategic. You need to have a much bigger picture when you're moving up the career ladder. So it's very different when you're at the very beginning. You need your technical skills. Absolutely. As you move up, you need to start incorporating more of the human skills and more of the strategic thinking skills, the conceptual skills. And those are the ones that you get to practice and gain when you're doing an MBA.
I love that. I think that's a really helpful explanation, especially for someone who's considered an MBA. Myself, learning more about the holistic aspect of a business. I have heard it referred to before as working on the business as opposed to in the business. And I relate it to that a little bit of, yes, you're 100% right. To start out your career, you have to have the technical skills to get you into whatever role you're initially pursuing. From there, a lot of your team leaders and a lot of the people managing you or that you're managing, they have to take on extra responsibility to your exact point of, okay, how do I work on the business? How do I think more strategy related? How not only do I help the company grow, but the people working underneath me grow? I think an MBA would be a great asset for people looking to do that. I do want to ask you, though, a little bit about, for someone that made a career transition like yourself, what were some of the things that you experienced in your prior roles that opened your eyes to wanting to do something else? What were some of those maybe defining moments, or what made you realize that true passion and make a move?
It actually stemmed from the work that I did during my MBA. I started in 2010, my MBA, and I received executive coaching during that program. And it was transformational to the point that I decided to certify myself, and I started coaching on the side, coaching, mentoring pro bono. And it became seeing that human potential and being able to be the catalyst for that aha moment and growth, both in career and personal life. It started to take on more of my heart. It started to fulfill me far more than what I was doing in my career in marketing. Not that I have anything against my career. It brought me where I am now. It was fun. The company I was working for was fantastic, the best colleagues. But it got to the point where I thought, this was great, this was fun, but I think my world needs better leaders. And I think I can put my little grain of sand, mi granito de arena, towards that, right? If I can contribute even in the smallest amount to equip leaders that can lead themselves, super important, and others better, that can find a purpose and create impact. Those are the main things for me. Then I'm going to go for it. Super scary. I was confident in my identity as an executive. And this was a big change, Vinny, for me. When I lost that title of executive, I was lost in my identity. I went back to being a student. I went to Harvard to study leadership under Ronald Heifetz at the Harvard Kennedy School. And that transition from executive to student, super hard. And then from student to now what? Also super challenging. So one of the biggest learnings that I've had has been not to equate or attach my worth and my value, my identity to a title. And that is something that, had I known earlier in my career, I think I would have been maybe some decisions would have been made differently. But that was one of the hardest moments. And the reason why I'm writing this book is because I figured out that if you have these 3 blocks of self-awareness and knowledge, self-knowledge, any change, whether it's a transition from high school to college, from college to work, or a different career, even if it's just a new situation, a new experience, when you know what your values are, what your mindsets are, and if they're serving you, and what your strengths are, you have this solid base, as long as they're aligned, to make decisions. It becomes a filter, if you will, that allows you to see things with, okay, does it make sense? Is it aligned with my values, my strengths, and my mindsets? Then hell yes. If it's not, then let me think about it, and maybe there's more to investigate about that. So that has been something super powerful to me. The fact that I've coached myself, right? The better I got at coaching others, it helped me coach myself. That helped me very much in the transition. Removing that attachment to a title. So now if I introduce myself to you, and I start saying, oh, I'm a coach, I'm a teacher, I'm a speaker, I'm a founder of the Institute of Leadership and Culture, of the Latina Leadership Collective, and I keep going, you're going to be like, lady, what's going on? But something that really helped me ground myself was finding the purpose, finding my mission, my why. And that is building better leaders. So the fact that I have aligned myself with that purpose, with all those values, it allows me to bring that why, that purpose to life wearing different hats. The hat of a coach, the hat of a teacher, the hat of a speaker, so on and so forth, the hat of an author. So I have evolved from focusing on the title to focusing on the why. What am I trying to do with the actions that I'm doing? Why is it important? What is the impact of what I'm doing? So that has been a very important transition to me. Would have loved to have had that way of thinking a little bit earlier in my career, for sure. And that's why I'm writing the book. I want to bring this to the hands, especially of younger professionals who find themselves sometimes in moments of doubt. And I call this book my love letter to fellow high performers who sometimes feel like they're not enough.
I love that. I feel like I see that often I work in the consulting world. And so being in a career of a lot of high performers, you see the mentality that you're suggesting almost every single day. It's almost sought after to have a candidate that has that type of personality or that mindset, because it makes you perform better in the job in some regards, but can also impact you in a negative way. And so I'm personally excited to read your book. I am curious though. We've talked a little bit about what the goal is with the book and who it aims to serve. We've talked a little about your why for writing it. Can you help me understand, just for general curiosity, but the process of writing the book? When did the idea kind of come into inception? And then how did you take the necessary steps to compile your thoughts, put the book together, get it released, and maybe just walk us through that if you don't mind.
Absolutely. The desire to write a book started a while back. I actually tried and succeeded in writing bilingual children's books first. So it was meant to be a series. It was based on my puppy. I had a Boston Terrier at the time, and she was the protagonist. And I had been wanting to just put something in paper, kind of contribute to the literary library of knowledge of the world. And I started doing that. It was a passion project. I call it a success because I started and I finished it. It was very small in terms of scope, but I wanted to test the waters. So I did a little bit of that. And that's also part of building confidence, is getting used to those scary actions or those scary decisions. But for this grown-up book, it really started taking shape when I started teaching, because I saw my students going through the same challenges, intellectual and mental and emotional challenges, with the same types of questions that I have had throughout my career. It's not going to stop. Questions don't stop. Doubts don't stop. But with the book, what I'm trying to do is create a far friendlier way to approach those questions. So it started when I noticed, it's not just me going through this process. And little by little, I started thinking, okay, so what's resonating with my students? I like my classes to be very interactive, a lot of practice. I teach leadership and organization, so it's very much what I love to talk about and teach about. And I have them go through my Confident Leader workbook. And reading that, it was, okay, I understand what's challenging my students. It's exactly the same things that have challenged me throughout my 20 plus career years in business. So the first thing I did, I joined a program that would help me keep accountable to all of the phases. But the very first thing I did was go on a date with the book. So it was this idea that I had, right? I could envision my reader holding the book in his or her hands, and like with a smile, with that aha moment in their eyes. And that's the image that keeps pushing me or guiding me through all of these very difficult processes in writing the book. From getting stuck in writing the first draft, understanding how you position the book, how is it different? So my tension statement, this is a really interesting way of starting, of thinking of the book is, what about this book is unusual or novel? And to me, what I want this book to do is to bring to awareness that we're thinking about imposter syndrome all wrong. That instead of thinking about these doubts as something negative, these questions that we ask ourselves, or phrases that we tell ourselves, these narratives that we have, instead of thinking them as something negative, actually they're very helpful and productive. And how do you rephrase those questions so that you get to process them and use that information to allow you to make decisions? So that image keeps guiding me. So tension statement. Then you have drafting creating the first draft, keeping accountable to yourself of every week writing 1,000 words, writing 2,000 words, finishing up a chapter. You can't start thinking, I have to write 60,000 words or 80,000 words. That is so overwhelming that it just immediately, it feels too much, too big. But when you chunk it into small bites, and that you will see tiny habits, there's a whole, an entire movement around these small chunks of accessible and doable actions. That gets you through that first draft. The beauty of it, Vinny, is that great books are not written, they're rewritten. So the first draft is meant to be chaotic and a complete mess. So if you embrace the mess and you say, okay, I'm doing what I can, I just need to put in my thoughts, all my thoughts and my ideas on paper, that's good enough for that first draft. Then there's the marketing side of it, which is where I am now. Then you have the production side. So we're going to start talking about the cover of the book, which I invite anybody who wants to pre-order the book now will be part of my community that will help me decide on that final cover of the book. Then there's also a book tour. It's quite a long process. over a year and a half, more or less. And one of the most important things has been that of I'm trusting the process. I can't expect results right away. This is something that it's a strength that I have, that I'm an activator, a proactive. I'm action biased, but in a long process, you need to be far more deliberate and patient with yourself and with the process. And I think the most important part is, how are you learning and growing from this experience? How are you managing expectations too? If your goal is, I'm going to write a book so I can be a bestseller and I'm going to become a millionaire from my book, I question those expectations and those motivations. Hopefully, you might end up on the best New York bestseller list. You might end up making money, but that's a purpose that can easily derail you when things get rough. And that's why I always go back to that person holding the book and just feeling some moment of transformation and just being glad that they're reading what I'm writing in that future, hopefully not too far. Just staying grounded on that, I'm bringing something with care. It's out of my heart. It's, I want to make a difference in that person's life.
Well, it's one of those last things you mentioned there. I've heard that brought up with a lot of people before, actually, a lot of high achieving people, in the sense that when you find your why is not always can it be rooted in money. And that being the reason you just mentioned, that it doesn't hold up during the extremely tough times. It can drive you for a certain period of time. And you mentioned yourself, it brings me back to a thought of a lot of friends who work in investment banking. I work in consulting, both a lot of long hours, but still different ends of the spectrum. You said yourself, you worked in banking, private equity, Morgan Stanley. A lot of the people that pursue those careers could be driven by the money, not all of them, but could be driven by the money aspect of it. And there's a very high burnout, very high turnover rate in those types of fields, because of that exact reason, that when the times get tough, if you're not truly passionate about what you're doing, you're not really going to hold up in the moments when you've really got to buckle down and perform at a high level when you absolutely do not want to. The money's not always going to be there. And then the subsequent kind of sidebar to that is the term golden handcuffs I hear thrown around a lot, that despite having all of the money that you could possibly want in one of those roles, you have no time to spend it. You've got the golden handcuffs on because you're working too much, or you're too focused on other priorities with work to focus on anything else. You don't have that creative outlet, that passion outlet, whatever it may be. Little bit of a tangent there. But,
yeah, Vinny, I think that's fantastic. That's one of the things. It might be the very first thing that I do when I start a new term with my group of MBAs or MBA students. The first exercise, when they are introducing themselves to the class, I ask them to introduce themselves first with their purpose, their why, then with their hows. This is Simon Sinek, the Golden Circle. Their how, that's their education, whatever certifications, what have you. And then the title. What is it that they do? Many people tell me, I don't know what my purpose is. And a whole bunch of them say, well, right now, what I want is money, right? We all need money. We all need a livelihood, right? Something to sustain us, especially if you have family and as your responsibilities grow. There's nothing wrong with wanting financial stability. Now, what I ask in terms of the exercise of that is, why is it important? What about having money is important to you? So every time, you might have heard of the 5 whys. Every time that comes up as, all I want is a better job, or all I want is more money for my family or for myself, I start this question, and I usually take it to a coaching session. I do it then instead of in front of everybody in the class. But the deeper into those intentions or motivations we get to, the more it crystallizes in terms of the true origins of that desire. And it moves away from, I just want a fancy title and I just want a Lamborghini, to, I want to create stability for my family. I want, there's a lot of narratives and money stories that get into that conversation quite a bit, that can become limiting beliefs. And it just becomes that when you create that connection to prosperity and bringing impact to others and creating good in the world, all of a sudden the money kind of comes with that. If you're creating impact, if you get really good at what you do and you approach it as, how am I contributing to my role, to my company, to my clients, it, the consequence of that usually comes in dollar signs. So moving away from, I want money for the purpose of money, to, what is it that I can do with that money? How is it that that money will make a difference in my family and in the world? That's why the exercise of looking at your purpose, you might have heard of the Ikigai. I do that with all of my clients, with all of my students, just finding that purpose, that meaning, removes that weight of the dollar sign and puts it over on, what's the impact? What's the good that I'm doing to the world? And you do a lot of good in consulting, in investment banking. You got to find, or connect to that end user or client. And actually, it's not just the client, it's the client's family and their legacy. Right? That's when you connect to that, and you want to, then that be the, and that becoming your motivation, then you get really, really good at what you do and money comes along. What do you think?
That was a great answer. Something that I ponder in my head quite often. And so it's nice to hear someone, I guess, explain it so eloquently. It's hard to conceptualize what your why is. And so when you really dig in and think about it, it takes some soul searching. And I would encourage all of the listeners to do the same, no matter what stage of your career journey that you're on, whether that be coming out of school or, like we said earlier, transitioning into a new career. What is the purpose behind wanting the money or the stability or the role that you're in currently? I do want to shift just a little bit. I have a little bit of a loaded question for you.
Ooh,
It likely changes. The only reason I say it's loaded is because it likely changes. But I do want to know, with someone like yourself, as you mentioned earlier, author, speaker, coach, what is a day in the life like for you? What typically goes on? What do you do on a daily basis? What are you working towards? What does it look like?
Nice. It's quite different to my pre-pivoting life. I was an executive traveling around the world, way too many hours at work, and with a teenage son. It wasn't as fulfilling as I envisioned it to be when I was starting in the career. So definitely very intentional to slow down. I did have a bit of a burnout, so it's become a goal of mine to slow down, be able to experience life more intentionally, be more present. Been able to be much more present with my son. He's 21 now. He's in college, but just allowing myself to go through, life a little more present. So definitely I've experienced the hustle, that I don't say it's bad, because especially when you're young and when you have energy and when you have this ambition, you gotta work hard, right? Now as you grow in the career and in your life, and you start getting multiple forces pulling you, families and other interests, then's when it can get out of hand. And that's when ideally you're holding on to some why that's guiding all of your efforts. Now, on this end, very different, especially after the pandemic. Working from home has been fantastic. Speaking engagements that take me to Seattle to speak to Microsoft, 650 people across all of the Americas, to schools across the US. That I still love traveling, so that helps me. I do quite a bit of workshops with executive teams, so going to companies at a corporate level. The coaching, I can do it either in person or on virtually on the computer, which is fantastic. I got a lot more comfortable with being in front of a screen. This conversation, Vinny, a few years ago, I would have stumbled even worse. It's definitely a skill that we can learn and get better at. And just taking my time, being very careful about my health. So something that happened back in September, my puppy that I mentioned passed away, knocked me out. So I only have one child, my Louie, and I only had one puppy. I didn't have any pets before. I don't think I'm going to have any after. And it really was impactful. And it created a moment of distress that I did not anticipate over passing of a puppy, of a pet. She was 7 years with us, almost 8. So that brought a lot of focus to my mental and emotional health as well as physical. So I want to make sure that I'm drinking my mushroom coffee. I'm taking my protein. I'm taking my vitamins. I walk around my neighborhood. I do my grounding. I take my son in the morning. I try to incorporate all of these amazing advice that's out there that wasn't as common or as science-based in the past, and really incorporate it and make it part of my day. So far more connected in the family, far more connected with people. I do, since I do a lot of coaching, it's one-on-one with a multitude of people, teaching as well. That happens once or twice a week in different terms. And it's that connection with so many human beings, same as with speaking, that brings me all the energy. So you can tell I'm a little more on the extroverted side of the ambivert scale. That fills me with energy. So that's something that I search for. Lunches, coffees, and trying to create that connection. So one of the words that has been super important to me for this year, instead of having resolutions, New Year's resolutions, I have my word, and my word is meaning and connection, or 2 words, meaning and connection. And that's what I strive to do in all of my activities.
Ana, it has been absolutely amazing listening to you give all these wonderful words of advice. Like I mentioned earlier, I personally cannot wait to get a copy of the book and read it myself. Where can people find out more about you and about the upcoming book coming out? And if they want to get in touch, how should they do so?
Sure. Got website, www.analarreaalbert.com. There's a lot of A's, a whole bunch of R's. I'm sure you can see that in the description of the show. On LinkedIn, please connect with me on LinkedIn, Ana Larrea-Albert. There's no other Ana Larrea-Albert. And even if you get close with the spelling of the last name, you will get to me. I encourage you and your listeners to reach out, connect, and ask me questions. I can jump on a Zoom call and have a conversation. I have time dedicated to spending 30 minutes, 45 minutes especially with students and young professionals who need a little bit of advice or a little bit of coaching or a check-in with their mindsets. more than happy to do that. So LinkedIn, website. For the book, you can find links for the book as well. But I have a couple of Bitly URLs that you can use. Bitly pre-order Beyond Enough book. So the name of the book is Beyond Enough, the High Performer's Path to Confident Leadership. So Bitly pre-order Beyond Enough, the book. And if you want to join the newsletter, it's just Bitly Beyond Enough book.
Perfect. Well, as you mentioned, we'll have all of this listed out for you guys in the show notes so the description of the show today. When we get this released, I hope that everyone goes and secures a pre-order copy of the book. I know I will. But Ana, it has been absolutely fabulous. Thank you everyone for tuning in to another episode of Up to the Mic. We will see you in the next one.
Let's go. Yeah. I'm like an addict, do I gotta have it. I ain't even playing, got a really bad habit. If it moves, gotta grab it. Fuse like a magnet, lose, won't have it till I'm doomed in a cat.